The first time he saw me in the look he loved, I thought my whole life was over. I still remember the exact shade of the blouse, a soft wine red that looked ordinary on the hanger and dangerous on me, the kind of color that makes your skin look warmer and your secret look real. I had the curtains half closed, the room light dim, one earring on, one heel kicked off, lipstick still uncivilized at the edges, and I was standing in front of the mirror trying to decide if I looked ridiculous or finally honest. Then I caught movement behind me in the reflection. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I had missed a stare. He was there in the doorway, frozen for 1 second, me frozen for the next, and in that impossible silence, I prepared myself for the laugh, the confusion, the disgust, the questions, the pity, all the things I had trained my body to survive before they even happened. But none of that came. He looked straight at me, not the way people look at a joke, not the way they stare at an accident, but like he had stumbled onto a song he didn't know he needed. His eyes softened, his mouth moved into the smallest smile, and he said, almost under his breath, "So that's when you look most like yourself." That one sentence did more damage to the walls I had built than any insult ever could, because insults I knew how to fight. Kindness, especially the kind that sees you too clearly, is what undoes you. I yanked the wig off so fast it snagged in the comb teeth, and almost took my courage with it. I grabbed the nearest hoodie, wiped my lipstick with the back of my hand, and started apologizing before he had even said another word. I don't know what exactly I was apologizing for. For existing in two versions. For wanting softness. For borrowing beauty from a world I had been told did not belong to me. For the cheap heels under my bed, the hidden makeup bag inside a shoebox, the folded skirts buried beneath old winter clothes, the late-night tutorials and incognito tabs, the way my pulse changed when fabric draped the right way across my body. He didn't move closer. He didn't try to rescue me from the panic. He just leaned against the doorway and waited until the storm passed enough for me to hear him properly. Then he said, "You don't owe me an explanation. I'm only sorry you felt like you had to hide." I wish I could tell you I became brave right then, that I stood up straight and owned myself in one dramatic breath, but that's not how these stories go. Real fear has roots. I told him to leave.
I said it harder than I meant to.
He nodded once, stepped back, and before he turned away he glanced at the mirror again, at the version of me I was trying to erase, and said, "For what it's worth, the earrings work better with your face than the hoodie." Then he left me alone with my heartbeat, my mess, and the first crack in the prison I had mistaken for safety. That night I packed everything away, with shaking hands. Not because I wanted to stop, but because being seen had made the whole thing feel too real. When crossdressing is private, it can live inside fantasy. It can be ritual, relief, escape, discovery, comfort, rebellion, all at once. You can tell yourself it doesn't mean anything permanent. You can say it's just fabric, just makeup, just a mood, just a phase, just one side of you stretching after being cramped too long. But the moment another person sees it and recognizes something true, the stakes change. Suddenly, it isn't just what you wear. It's what it reveals. I shoved the heels into the back of the closet, zipped dresses into garment bags, cleaned every trace of mascara off my sink, and sat on the floor in the dark trying to convince myself I had been stupid. Yet all I could think about was the way he had looked at me. Not amused, not shocked, not curious in a cruel way. He had looked relieved, like he had been waiting for me to stop pretending and had only just now gotten proof that there was more to me than the version I performed in daylight. That thought ruined sleep for me. By morning, I hated him a little for being gentle, because gentle people are dangerous when you have spent your life hiding. They make secrecy feel heavier. 3 days passed, and he acted like nothing had happened. That should have comforted me, but it made me crazy instead. We crossed paths in the hallway, exchanged normal words, talked about coffee, traffic, the broken elevator, rent going up, all the boring little things people use to keep life safely flat. He never mentioned the blouse, never mentioned the wig, never mentioned the mirror. If I looked at him too long, though, I caught something in his eyes, not exposure, not even invitation, just recognition. He knew, and now I knew he knew, and that made every ordinary conversation feel like it was happening on top of a secret trapdoor. On the 4th evening, I found a small shopping bag hanging from my doorknob.
My name wasn't on it.
Inside was a note written on the back of a receipt. It said, "You chose a beautiful color, but the undertone fought you. Try deeper berry, not orange red. Also, the wrong bra can ruin a perfect look. If you ever want help, go to this place after 7. Tell Mira I sent you." There was no signature, only the name of a boutique I had walked past a dozen times without daring to enter. I must have read the note 20 times. The nerve of him, the accuracy of him, the fact that he had noticed undertones while my whole body had been on fire with shame. I should have thrown the note away. Instead, I folded it carefully and slid it into my wallet like it was a map. I spent 2 more days arguing with myself before I went. If you've never stood outside a boutique with your pulse in your throat, wondering whether you are about to humiliate yourself in public or rescue a piece of your life, then you may not understand how long a door handle can take to turn. The windows were dim, the sign said closed, and still I nearly fled. But I thought about that one line again, "The wrong bra can ruin a perfect look," and I laughed in spite of myself because it was true. That was one of my first real lessons. A lot of new crossdressers obsess over the visible magic and ignore the hidden engineering. Everyone looks at the dress, but the understructure is what changes your shape, posture, and confidence. The right bra, padding, smoothing layers, waist placement, even a line where the waistband sits, all of it matters more than people think. A glamorous look built on uncomfortable basics becomes awkward fast. I finally stepped in. The bell over the door chimed, and my soul almost left my body. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 50s with silver hair, sharp glasses, and the kind of face that had seen every kind of secret and never once betrayed one. Beside her, flipping through a lookbook like this was the most normal scene on earth, was him. I nearly turned around, but Mira smiled first. "So you're the mystery client," she said, as if I had walked in for a hem adjustment instead of a private identity emergency. He stood up, not too fast, and said, "Before you decide whether to hate me, I need you to know I only sent you because they're the best." I stared at him.
They?
I asked. Mira snorted. "Darling, if you're going to learn, start by understanding that style is less about gender and more about line, balance, and confidence. Sit down." I sat because my legs were unreliable and because her tone allowed no alternative. What followed changed me more than any dramatic confession ever could. Mira didn't start with fantasy. She started with proportion. She explained how fabric falls differently depending on shoulder width, waist placement, and movement. She showed me why a neckline can soften or sharpen a face, why sleeve length matters, why too tight clothes scream costume while a well-fitted piece whispers intention. She looked at my posture and told me my biggest problem wasn't masculinity, it was apology. "You're folding inward before the clothes even get a chance," she said. "Straighten your spine. Beauty hates hesitation." He laughed softly at that, and I hated how much I liked hearing it. That was the night I learned my second big lesson. Stop trying to become an imitation of someone else's femininity. I had been buying outfits that looked incredible on certain bodies, certain creators, certain polished social media clips, and then punishing myself when they looked wrong on me. Mira stripped that insecurity down in minutes. She pulled 3 dresses for me, all styles I would never have chosen, and only one worked. But when it worked so well I had to sit down again. It wasn't the flashiest one. It wasn't the shortest, tightest, prettiest, or trendiest. It was the one that understood my shape before I did. That was the first time I looked into a mirror while fully dressed and didn't feel like I was trying to trick myself. I felt coherent. He watched my face when I turned toward the mirror, and that was when I saw it. He wasn't fascinated by the clothes. He was fascinated by what happened to me inside them. "There," he said quietly. "That look. That's the one I saw in your room. It should have embarrassed me, but instead it made my chest warm in a way I hadn't expected. I wasn't used to being read so carefully. Most people never notice the difference between a smile you wear and one that arrives on its own. From that night on, everything should have become easier. Instead, it became more complicated because now I had a witness, a guide, and an ache. We started meeting at the boutique after hours. Sometimes Mira would help me try on outfits, and sometimes she would sit us both down like two students and teach us things about styling, grooming, and presents that most people never say out loud. She taught me that if your foundation doesn't match your neck, the illusion breaks immediately. She taught me that blending is not optional, that brows shape expression more than beginners understand, that matte finishes can save you under harsh lighting, and that heavy contour is often a crutch for insecurity, not skill. She taught me that good posture can feminize a silhouette more elegantly than dramatic makeup. She taught me to walk by thinking about rhythm, not performance. Smaller steps, she said, tapping my knee. Not because women are smaller, but because grace is often about control, not size. Every lesson made me better, but every lesson also made me more visible to myself. There's a strange pain in becoming what you wanted because you also have to face how badly you wanted it. Then came the first
disaster.
It had to happen. Every real transformation story has one humiliating moment where fantasy slips on a wet floor. Mine arrived in the form of a photo. Mira had done my makeup after hours as practice, deep berry lips like the note had suggested, softened eye, clean base, subtle jewelry, a fitted black wrap dress that made me feel like I had stolen my own future. I looked so good I forgot fear for a whole 7 minutes. He took my phone and said, "Let me get one picture. Just for you." He knew angles.
I'll give him that.
He captured me by the mirror with my chin tilted down, eyes lifted, one hand at my waist, and for the first time I saw an image of myself that didn't feel like a compromise. My hands shook as I saved it. On the way home, still floating, I opened my phone to send the picture to a hidden folder. Instead, distracted and smiling like an idiot, I tapped the wrong contact. The photo flew straight into an old college group chat I had muted years ago but never left. 5 men. 2 of them vicious, when they wanted to be funny. One of them someone who still lived in my city. I think I stopped breathing for half a minute. I deleted it for everyone, but by then it was already too late. You know that sick feeling when a second becomes a cliff? That was me, standing on the sidewalk in heels under jeans and a coat, staring at my screen like it had turned into a loaded weapon. The first response came instantly. "Bro?" Then a laughing emoji. Then, "Ain't no way." I walked 3 blocks without seeing anything around me. My mind went straight to worst-case futures. Screenshots, ridicule, exposure, calls, gossip, work somehow finding out, family hearing versions of the story from strangers before they ever heard truth from me. I got home, tore everything off, and sat on the bathroom floor in makeup I suddenly despised. 10 minutes later, he was knocking on my door. I hadn't even told him. He must have seen my location stop and guessed from the way I'd panicked. When I opened the door, I was furious. At myself, at him, at the world, at beauty for costing so much. He didn't defend himself or try to offer easy comfort. He just said, "Let me help you before fear writes the story. For you." That sentence became another turning point because he was right. The people who hate or mock you often gain power because panic makes you surrender the narrative. We sat at my table and drafted 3 possible responses.
Ignore. Deny.
Own it. Each came with consequences. He never pushed me. He just laid them out honestly. That honesty mattered. When you're living a hidden life, bad advice usually comes in the form of either reckless encouragement or terrified shame. Very few people will tell you the truth with care. I stared at the chat, then at my own reflection in the black phone screen, and something tired inside me stood up. I typed, "Yeah, that was me. I sent it by mistake. Laugh if you want, but I'm done pretending it was never part of me." My finger hovered for a full 10 seconds before I sent it. The group went quiet. Then one person reacted with fire for some reason. One left the chat. One sent, "Didn't expect that, but respect for owning it." The one I feared most typed nothing at all. It wasn't a perfect outcome. It wasn't applause. It wasn't disaster either. And that was the lesson. Sometimes the monster in your head is bigger than the room you're actually standing in. Not always, but often enough to notice. He made tea while I shook through the aftershock, and when I asked him why he cared this much, he looked at me for a long moment and said, "Because watching you disappear would feel worse than watching you panic." That should have been the part where I let myself trust him. But trust is not a straight road, especially when desire is involved. Because by then, yes, I desired him. Not just because he was kind or observant or beautiful in that infuriating way some people are beautiful without performing it, but because he saw the part of me I had kept in the dark and never treated it like a joke. That kind of recognition can feel intimate faster than touch. So, naturally, I did what scared people do. I pulled away. I skipped the boutique for a week. I ignored his messages. I told myself I needed space to figure out whether I wanted my identity or his approval. It's an important distinction, and if you are learning this life, remember it. Never build your femininity entirely around the gaze of one person, even a loving one, because then your reflection becomes rented property. You need a relationship with yourself that survives admiration. Mine didn't, not yet. So I hid again, but worse this time because once you've been seen with tenderness, hiding feels less like safety and more like self-betrayal. The next turning point came from someone I never expected, my cousin Sanaa. She showed up unannounced one Sunday afternoon with pastries and the terrifying intuition women in my family seemed to inherit at birth. She walked in, sat down, looked around my apartment for 30 seconds, and said, "So, are you going to tell me why there's berry lipstick on the inside rim of your mug?" I nearly dropped the plate in my hand. She had always been sharp, but this felt supernatural. I tried to laugh it off. She didn't let me. "Listen," she said, softer now. "I am not here to trap you. I'm here because I know what hiding looks like, even when the details are different." I stared at her, waiting for judgment. Instead, she said, "If you're doing this, please tell me you're not learning makeup from those tragic ring light people who use 3 shades too much concealer." I laughed so hard, I actually had to sit down. Then I cried, which was much less elegant. That was the day I told a family member the truth, and it did not end with shouting, exile, or dramatic music. It ended with her opening my closet, surveying my secret wardrobe, and saying, "You have decent taste, but your wig storage is offensive." Sanaa became my crash course in realism. Mira taught artistry. Sanaa taught survival. She taught me how to check a hem in daylight before trusting it, how to carry a backup pair of flats if I was going out, how to test a lipstick under different lighting because some shades betray you under white LEDs, how to pack a touch-up kit that actually matters instead of lugging around half a vanity. She taught me the magic of accessories used with restraint. "Don't wear every idea at once," she said, taking off 2 bracelets and a necklace I had piled on out of nervous excitement. "Let one thing speak." She taught me that confidence looks louder when your outfit isn't screaming over it. Most importantly, she taught me about safety in public. Where to go, what time to go, how to read a room fast, how to leave without announcing panic, how to keep your phone charged, your ride ready, your awareness on. People love glamorous transformation stories, but anyone telling crossdressers only about the fantasy and not the safety is failing them. The world can be beautiful. It can also be stupid. Preparation is not paranoia. It is self-respect. With Sanaa helping and Mira refining, I became bolder. I didn't become fearless. That's a lie people sell when they want courage to sound cinematic. I became practiced. There's a difference. Fear still arrived, but it no longer made all my decisions for me. The first time I stepped out fully dressed in public was on a Thursday evening, because I figured Thursdays are overlooked. Fewer crowds, less chaos, easier exits. I wore a cream blouse, high-waisted dark trousers, a soft wave wig, and earrings small enough to feel intentional, not theatrical. He met me 2 blocks from the cafe, so I wouldn't have to do the whole walk alone. When he saw me, he stopped mid-step, looked me up and down, without vulgarity, and smiled like he had been right about me from the start. "You learned restraint," he said. I rolled my eyes, but secretly I glowed. Inside the cafe, every sound felt magnified. Cups clinking, chairs scraping, a laugh from too far away. I was convinced everyone knew. The truth was, most people were too busy being themselves to investigate me. That was another lesson worth keeping. Strangers do not study us as much as our fear claims they do. Some notice, some guess, some don't. Most are passing through their own weather. For 20 beautiful minutes, I believed I might actually be okay. Then one of the baristas looked at me twice. Not suspiciously, just twice. That's all it took for my pulse to start misbehaving. I forgot how to hold my cup. My shoulders climbed. My voice tightened when I ordered water. He leaned in, so casually nobody else could have read it, and said, "Breathe lower. Your posture tells the room your fear before your face does." Such a simple thing, but it changed the moment. I dropped my shoulders, loosened my grip, and felt the scene reset. We talked. Actually talked. About music, old regrets, why certain fabrics make people stand differently, why shame and desire often grow beside each other. Then the door opened, and in walked one of the men from that old college group chat. He looked straight at me, frowned slightly as if trying to place me, then looked at him, then back at me. Time slowed. I knew that face. He almost knew mine. He approached our table. Every awful future I had postponed came running back at once. "Do I know you?" he asked, eyes on me. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Before silence could betray me, he answered for me. "No," he said lightly, turning toward the guy with easy confidence. "But you might know me. We met at Karen's birthday, I think." That small redirection was genius. It shifted the social puzzle away from me and onto a context the man recognized. They exchanged half-memories. Laughed about some old party. The danger thinned. But then the man looked at me again and said, "Wait, your eyes look familiar." I wanted the floor to open. He smiled at me, and for the first time since he had found me in that wine-red blouse, there was steel in his voice. "Her eyes look tired," he said. "We're in the middle of something." The man backed off with an awkward chuckle and returned to his table. I sat there shaking behind a controlled face while the world pretended nothing had happened. When I finally looked at him, he said, "You don't have to thank me." So, of course, I did the opposite. I got angry. "You shouldn't have said her like that if you weren't sure I wanted it." The hurt in his face was instant. He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "I protected the moment, not your boundary. I'm sorry." That apology altered everything. See, people think trust grows from grand protection, but real trust grows from somebody admitting when they got it wrong, even while trying to help. His apology told me he respected me more than the fantasy of being my hero. I took a breath, unclenched my jaw, and said, "I didn't hate it. I just wasn't ready for how much I didn't hate it." He stared at me, and something passed between us so sharp and silent it felt like a secret door opening. We didn't kiss.
Not then.
Instead, we left the cafe, walked in the cooling evening air, and he asked me what I wanted to be called when I looked like this. Nobody had ever asked me that before. Not what was correct. Not what was allowed. What I wanted. Desire can begin with a look, but intimacy begins with a question asked the right way. I told him the name I had whispered only to mirrors. He repeated it with care, not testing it, not decorating it, just giving it back to me as if it had always been waiting for sound. I swear I nearly cried on the sidewalk. A name can do that. A name can take a feeling and let it stand upright in the world. You would think that once I had a name, a guide, a cousin ally, a boutique mentor, and a few successful outings, my story would settle into confidence. It didn't, because the next turning point hit where all fragile courage gets tested: family. My mother called to say she and my aunt were coming by the following week because they were in the area, a phrase every adult knows means nothing good. My apartment was no longer just a home. It was evidence. Hidden cosmetics. A curling wand. A shoe rack with women's sizes.
Receipts from the boutique.
A wig stand in the back room. Perfume that definitely didn't belong to the person my family thought I was. I had 6 days to decide whether to erase myself again or risk discovery. The old me would have buried everything instantly. The new me hesitated. That hesitation mattered. It meant I was no longer asking whether this part of me was real. I was asking whether it deserved space. Still, fear won the first round. I packed nearly everything into storage bins and tucked them into the high closet, the place where inconvenient truths go to wait. While I was doing that, I found the very first scarf I had ever tried around my shoulders, years ago, cheap and frayed and ridiculous. I held it for a long time. The history of shame is often made of small fabrics. When my mother arrived, she noticed I had cleaned too much. That's the problem with people who know you from the beginning. They can smell performance. She walked through the apartment slowly, complimented the curtains, criticized my fridge, asked why I suddenly owned a better steamer than she did, and almost caught sight of a heel under the couch. My heart was doing violence to my ribs. Then, in the middle of this domestic interrogation, she stopped at the bookshelf, picked up a small framed photo of me from years earlier, and said something that knocked the air out of me. "You look happier lately," she said without turning around. "Whatever changed, don't let anybody make you smaller again." She had no idea what she was saying. Or maybe mothers know more than they show and choose mercy over precision. I'll never know, but that line sat inside me long after she left. Sometimes acceptance arrives before disclosure, not in complete form, but as a window cracked open. It doesn't solve everything. It just gives the soul some air. A week later, I made my biggest mistake yet. I let romance outrun clarity. He invited me to dinner at his place, said Mira had sent over a dress she wanted me to try, and added, "Only if you want. No pressure." Which, of course, sounded safe enough to walk straight into danger. I went. The dress was midnight blue, elegantly simple, the kind of piece that doesn't chase attention because it expects it to arrive. I got ready in his bathroom while he cooked, and the intimacy of that alone felt almost unbearable. My things beside his razor, my earrings on his sink, my perfume moving through his apartment. I came out dressed, and for a long second, he just stared at me. Not hungrily, not politely. Honestly. "That," he said, "is the look I didn't know I was waiting for." It should have been perfect. Maybe it was too perfect. Because when he stepped closer and reached up to move one strand of wig hair away from my cheek, I flinched so hard I hit the table behind me. His face changed instantly. "I'm sorry," he said, backing away. I know what you thought," I snapped. "You always think you know what this means." The room went cold. What followed was our first real fight, and it was ugly because most of what I said wasn't about him. It was about every fear he represented without meaning to. I accused him of liking the performance more than the person. I accused him of wanting access to a version of me that felt beautiful because he got to discover it. I accused him of turning my private becoming into his emotional hobby. He let me say all of it. Then he asked one question that undid the entire performance of my anger. "If I disappeared tomorrow," he said, "would you still want this life for yourself?" I hated how fast the answer came.
Yes.
Absolutely yes. And because it was yes, my whole argument collapsed into the truth beneath it. I was terrified not that he loved the look, but that I loved being loved inside it. Those are different fears. One accuses, the other confesses. I sat down, face burning, and admitted what I had been avoiding for weeks. "I don't know how to separate being seen from being wanted," I said. He crouched in front of me, still keeping distance, and answered softly, "Then don't rush to. Just don't mistake my desire for ownership." That line saved us. We moved slower after that, and strangely, slower made everything hotter and safer at once. He stopped assuming. I started speaking. We built language around things I had only ever felt alone. What kind of compliments helped and what kind made me feel reduced. When I wanted advice and when I wanted silence. When I wanted to be admired and when I wanted to be treated like the same person in a different expression. That nuance matters, especially in stories like this. Crossdressing can attract projection from others so quickly. Some people fetishize it. Some mock it. Some romanticize it. Some try to recruit it into identities you may or may not claim, but your relationship to it is yours to define. I had to learn that repeatedly, not once, repeatedly, because each new layer of confidence invites new confusion from other people. The clearer you become, the more important your own definitions get. Then came the rumor. The man from the cafe must have connected the dots after all, because a week later someone at work asked me a question too casually. "You ever go to that little place on Holden Street?" My blood ran cold, but I stayed neutral. "Sometimes," I said. He smirked. "Thought I saw someone who looked exactly like you there. Must have been a cousin." I smiled, shrugged, and returned to my screen, but inside I was back on the bathroom floor with the accidental photo. Here is what changed, though. I didn't implode. I assessed. I asked myself what was real, what was guessed, what was only bait. Then I went to the restroom, locked a stall, and texted Sana, Mira, and him in one message. Possible workplace rumor. I need brains, not panic. That might sound small, but for me it was huge. I had finally built a support circle strong enough to reach for before fear took over. Mira replied first. If they know, let them know less than they want. Sana replied, no extra details. Calm wins. He replied, I'm outside your office in 20 if you want air. I took none of the bait that day. The rumor floated around like weak perfume and then lost power because I refused to feed it. Another lesson, not every shadow deserves a fight. Some evaporate when denied drama. By then, I had started posting photos privately under a hidden account, mostly for myself. No face at first, just details. An earring against a jawline. Hands arranged around a coffee cup. The fall of a skirt in motion. A lipstick stain on a napkin. There is something healing about documenting your own becoming, especially if you do it for witness rather than validation. But validation has a way of finding the door. One post in particular, just a mirror shot in a fitted green top and dark denim, began to circulate far beyond the tiny circle I expected. Comments poured in. Some sweet. Some flirty. Some messy. Some from crossdressers, saying the look gave them courage to try darker lip colors, softer wigs, cleaner lines. That meant everything to me. If I'm honest, I had wanted exactly that from the beginning. Not just to feel beautiful, but to become useful. Beauty that only ends in the mirror fades quickly. Beauty that hands somebody else permission lasts longer. Still, the growth scared me. The bigger the audience, the higher the risk. One night I showed him the account, half proud, half ashamed. He scrolled quietly for a while and then asked, do you want to go viral, or do you want to go true? I laughed. Can I want both? He grinned. Maybe. But if both ask different prices, know which one you'll pay. That question haunted me because it forced me to confront something creators, performers, and hidden people all face. Attention can reward the easiest version of you, not the most honest one. I noticed quickly that the posts doing best were the ones closest to fantasy. The ones with mystery, glam, a suggestive angle, that just out-of-reach softness people love to project onto. The posts where I talked about fit, dysphoria, fear, or emotional complexity did less.
Not badly.
Just less. And I had a choice. Feed the dream. Or deepen the truth. I try to balance both. Some nights I nailed it. Some nights I chased numbers and hated myself after. That's another thing people need to hear. Visibility does not cure insecurity.
Sometimes it industrializes it.
If you are learning to crossdress or learning to share it, never let applause become the only mirror you trust. It lies. Not always, but often enough to cost you something precious if you kneel to it. The next major turn came when Mira asked me to model in a small closed-door styling event she hosted for private clients. Not a runway, she said when I hesitated. A demonstration. Real bodies. Real movement. Real styling. My first instinct was no. My second was absolutely not. My third, annoyingly, was maybe. Sana said I should do it because nothing teaches you faster than being seen at full length under proper lighting. He said I should do it only if I could survive doing it without needing everyone in the room to approve. That was the condition that mattered. After 3 sleepless nights, I agreed. The event was tiny, intimate, beautifully arranged. Soft lamps, mirrors, racks of clothing, women of different ages, one photographer. No public posting without consent. Mira built 3 looks for me, each teaching something different. Structure, softness, and balance. In the first, she emphasized clean tailoring to prove I didn't need hyperfemininity to look compelling. In the second, she used drape and movement, showing how fluid fabric can change how you occupy space. In the third, she gave me the simplest look of all, fitted black trousers, silk blouse, berry lip, delicate earrings, and told me, if you can hold a room in this, you never needed costume. Only confidence. I stepped out in the third look last, and the room went quieter than before. Not loud applause. Something better. Attention. Mature attention. The kind that lands because the look is integrated, not because it's shouting for rescue. I walked slowly, remembering everything, shoulders down, chin easy, steps controlled, hands calm, breath low. I turned near the mirror, saw myself from 3 angles at once, and for the first time in public, I did not feel divided. That should have been the triumph of the night. It wasn't. The real turning point came after, when one of the older women approached me with tears in her eyes and said, "My husband used to cross-dress in secret. He died before he ever let himself look this free." I couldn't speak. She squeezed my hand and added, "Whatever you are becoming, please don't punish it to keep other people comfortable." I carried that sentence like fire for weeks. We think our private shame belongs only to us. Sometimes it becomes a chain passed quietly across generations. After the event, he and I finally kissed. Not because the room demanded it, not because I looked beautiful, not because the story needed romance, but because by then we had earned a kind of tenderness that didn't feel like theft. It was soft, careful, almost reverent. And yes, it changed things, but not the way people imagine. It didn't suddenly solve my fears. It gave them new forms. Now I had to navigate desire, without losing the self I had worked so hard to uncover. We kept talking, kept checking, kept slowing down whenever fantasy threatened to outrun honesty. That discipline became part of our intimacy. He never asked me to dress for him. He asked how I wanted to be seen. That is why I stayed. That is why I trusted him. Anyone can adore the version of you that excites them. The rare ones adore your boundaries too. Then everything almost collapsed because success has its own cruelty. A larger creator account reposted one of my images without asking. It blurred enough detail to preserve mystery, but not enough to protect me. The comments exploded. New followers flooded in. Some kind, some invasive, some clearly trying to identify me. One comment correctly guessed the neighborhood where the photo was taken. Another claimed they knew exactly who I was. I felt the room inside me tilt. This was the dark side of being caught in a look he loved. Once the look leaves your control, other people start trying to own the story. I deactivated the account within the hour. For 2 days, I barely answered messages. I pulled away from everyone, even Sanaa, especially him. It felt safer to disappear before the crowd could turn me into entertainment. On the 3rd night he came over, sat on the floor across from me, and said nothing for almost 5 minutes. Then he asked, "Do you want protection, perspective, or permission to quit?" It was such a good question, I almost laughed through the tears. "Perspective," I said. He nodded. Then here it is. Attention is not intimacy. Exposure is not truth. Virality is not belonging. If you walk away now, walk away because it's wrong for you, not because strangers got loud. That was the exact medicine I needed. So I made the hardest choice of the whole journey. I came back, but differently. I rebuilt the account around story instead of tease. I showed less fantasy and more process. I talked about underlayers, skin prep, why fit matters more than price, why wigs need shape, not just length, how confidence comes from repetition, not magic. I spoke about fear in public, about the first time your hands shake while fastening an earring, about how to recover when makeup fails, about how one right lipstick can teach you more about self-recognition than 10 compliments from people who don't really see you. Some followers left because it was less flirt, more truth. But the ones who stayed became real. Their messages were different. Men and women and gender non-conforming people wrote to say they finally felt less ridiculous, less alone, less fake. That mattered more than chasing numbers with my pulse in a cage. Ironically, that honesty is what made the account grow for real. Not overnight, not explosively, but deeply. People can sense when you stop performing confidence and start practicing it. The last big turning point arrived when he invited me to a rooftop party hosted by friends who knew him well and knew nothing about me. "Come however you want," he said. "No pressure to prove anything." I almost said no, because there is a special terror in entering a social space where you're not hidden but not explained either. At least with strangers, anonymity protects you. With friends of friends, Every glance feels like it might become a story later. Still, I went. I chose a soft black dress with clean lines, the berry lip that had started all of this, and a short jacket that made me feel elegant instead of exposed. On the ride there, my nerves were so obvious. He took my hand and said, "You don't have to be perfect tonight. You only have to be present." We arrived just after sunset. The city was all glitter and distance. For the first half hour, everything was manageable. People were warm, casual, curious in normal ways. A woman complimented my earrings. A man asked where I got my jacket. Another guest offered me sparkling water and moved on without reading me like a puzzle. I began to relax, which is usually when life decides the lesson isn't finished. Because near the far railing stood someone from my extended family. Not close enough to know my soul, but close enough to know my face. Or part of it. I saw him before he saw me, and every old emergency alarm in my body went off at once. I could have left. Maybe I should have. Instead, I did something I never imagined myself strong enough to do. I turned to him and said, very quietly, "If this goes wrong, I don't want to run." His expression changed with immediate understanding. "Then don't," he said. "But decide how much truth belongs to this moment." That's the thing about courage. It is rarely the absence of options. It is the calm choosing among them while scared. My relative turned, looked in my direction, hesitated, frowned slightly, and began walking toward us. Every nerve in me was ice and fire together. When he got close, he stared for 1 second too long. Then he said slowly, "Have we met before?" There it was again, that same question in a different mouth, but this time I was not the same person. I smiled, not a defensive smile, a measured one. "I'm family adjacent," I said lightly, which is either comforting or dangerous depending on the family. He laughed, a little thrown off, and named my cousin. I named her back. Enough truth to anchor the moment, not enough to surrender it. He looked relieved to find a social explanation and moved into small talk. We survived.
Barely.
After he walked away, I realized my knees were shaking under the table. He leaned in and whispered, "You did that. Not me." I knew, and that mattered more than almost being recognized. For years, I had imagined exposure as the end of everything. But that night I learned something more subtle. Being at risk of being known is not the same as being destroyed. Sometimes it is just the edge where your old fear goes to discover it no longer owns you. By then, the title of my own story had changed meaning for me. At first, caught in a look he loved meant danger. Then it meant desire. Then it meant discovery. By the end, it meant permission. Because the truth is, he did love the look, but the look was never just eyeliner, fabric, lips, silhouette, or movement. The look he loved was the exact second I stopped vanishing inside myself. That is why it stayed with him. That is why it stayed with me. Clothes can enchant people. Beauty can stun people. But self-recognition, when it lands visibly on a face, that's what people really remember. That's the look. The one that says, "I know I'm here now. I know this is mine. I know I don't need your approval to exist. But if you offer tenderness, I know how to receive it without disappearing." It took me a long time to wear that look without apology. I still have the wine red blouse. I never wear it out. Not because I'm ashamed, but because some clothes become relics after they become revelations. I keep it hanging where I can see it, beside better pieces, more refined pieces, pieces that fit me more beautifully now. But that blouse was the bridge. It was clumsy, slightly wrong for my undertone, and paired with the wrong bra exactly as the note had said. It was also the thing I wore when the old world cracked open and the future first looked back at me. Sometimes I hold it and think about how much I wanted to be impossible back then, because impossible things can't be judged. They also can't be lived. Real things can. Real things come with fit checks and panic and public lighting and terrible mistakes and learning curves and breath control and backup flats and better lipstick and better boundaries and people who do not deserve access and people who absolutely do. Real things are harder. Real things are also where the joy is. If you are listening to me now as someone who has only just started, someone hiding makeup in the back of a drawer, someone watching tutorials with the volume low, someone wondering whether you are ridiculous or brave or Both. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me sooner. Start with what fits, not what fantasies pressure you into buying. Respect your underlayers. They build the whole experience. Match your makeup to your skin and your lighting, not to a filtered stranger's face. Learn posture before you chase drama. Move with intention, not imitation. Carry safety like a ritual, not a burden. Don't let one person's desire define your reflection. Don't let one person's disgust erase it either. If you share yourself online, know why you are sharing. If you step outside, know your exits. If you are lucky enough to be seen kindly, don't hand that kindness more power than your own truth. And if one day somebody catches you in a look they love, make sure the thing they love most is not your costume, but your courage.
Because that is what lasted for me. Not the fear of the doorway.
Not the panic of the photo. Not the rumor, the near recognition. The nights I scrubbed my face off because I thought the world had gotten too close. What lasted was the slow construction of a self I could actually inhabit. A self that could flirt and freeze and fight, and learn and return. A self that could be elegant one night and messy the next, and still remain real through both. A self that stopped asking permission from rooms that had never even earned honesty. A self that understood style is not just decoration, it is language. The hemline says something. The lip color says something. The way you hold your shoulders says something long before your mouth opens. And eventually, if you stay with yourself long enough, the whole look begins to say one simple thing with stunning force. I am not hiding from my own reflection anymore. The funniest part is that people now think confidence arrived all at once. They see the photos, the calm walk, the cleaner makeup, the way I can hold eye contact without collapsing, and they assume I must have always had some secret strength. But confidence for me was built out of dozens of tiny survivals. The first time I wore earrings long enough for my ears to stop feeling guilty. The first time I found a wig that framed my face instead of swallowing it. The first time I corrected someone without shaking. The first time I left the house and came back stronger instead of smaller. The first time I was desired without being reduced. The first time I chose my own name out loud. The first time I looked in the mirror after taking everything off and still felt like I had not disappeared. That last one matters most. If your femininity only exists while the outfit is on, you will always fear the moment the zipper comes down. The deeper work is letting the honesty remain when the glamour leaves. He still catches me looking at myself sometimes. Not in a vain way. In that checking way, the one hidden people learn young, the quick measurement of whether we are safe, convincing, read correctly, holding together. When he notices, he doesn't rush to compliment me anymore.
He knows me better now.
Sometimes he just says, stay. One word. It means stay in the moment, stay in your body, stay on your own side, stay with the version of you that doesn't need to flee just because attention landed. I didn't know how much I needed a word like that until I had one. We all need language that steadies us. Some people find it in faith, some in friendship, some in routine. I found a peace of mind in a man who first saw me half-finished in a mirror and chose not to turn me into either a joke or a secret. He simply recognized me before I had enough courage to do it alone. So no, being caught in a look he loved did not ruin my life. It ruined the lie that I could keep living split in half forever. It forced me to learn the craft, not just the thrill. It taught me that femininity, for me, was not an act of deception but an act of revelation. It introduced me to the discipline behind beauty, the structure beneath softness, the emotional intelligence required to survive being visible. It gave me 12 different doors to run through and at least 12 reasons to stay. And in the end, the most viral thing about a story like mine was never going to be scandal. It was recognition. People stay to the end when they can feel a person crossing from shame into selfhood in real time. They stay because they want proof that fear is survivable, that desire can be clean, that style can become a language for truths too delicate to speak too soon. They stay because somewhere inside their own lives, hidden or not, they are waiting to be seen by themselves with that same impossible softness. And if I'm being completely honest, the most beautiful part was never the first look he loved. It was the last one of the night. Every now and then, when I've taken off the earrings, set the wig down, wiped away the lipstick, and I catch myself barefaced in the mirror before bed. There was a time that face felt like the end of the magic. Now it feels like the source of it. Not because the crossdress version is less real, but because she no longer has to fight for existence against the rest of me. We belong to each other now. We inform each other. We sharpen each other. We rescue each other. And that peace, that earned peace, changes every outfit from costume into expression. Once I understood that, everything got richer. The fabrics, the confidence, the romance, the risk, the relief. All of it. So, if you ask me what happened after he caught me in that look he loved, here is the truest answer I can give. I stopped dressing only to escape and started dressing to arrive. I stopped treating beauty like borrowed permission and started treating it like a skill I had every right to learn. I stopped chasing perfection and started practicing coherence. I stopped measuring every room by its danger and started measuring myself by my ability to remain present inside it. I learned when to reveal, when to deflect, when to leave, when to stay, and when to tell the truth in exactly the portion a moment had earned. I learned that one right lipstick can be more than color, it can be memory. One clean silhouette can be more than style, it can be dignity. One good friend can be more than support, they can be a bridge back to your own courage. And one person seeing you with love can change everything, but only if you also decide to stop looking away. That is the whole secret, if there is one. He loved the look, yes. But I learned to love the becoming. And once I did, nobody could ever truly take it from me again.